Joining us now, Joe DiGenova. Joe, good morning. Welcome to Mornings on the Mall. It's always such a pleasure to have you.
Good morning.
Joe, I think we could probably keep you for 2 hours because we have so many questions to ask you. So let's get right to it. Let's first talk about the federal judge on Friday rebuking Mueller's team during a hearing. Judge Ellis saying that, I want to see the scope memo. And I'll decide if there's things in this that I shouldn't see. But I want to see the scope memo. Is Judge Ellis going to get the scope memo?
Yes, he is. And if he doesn't get it, he certainly should get it. And if he doesn't get it, he's going to dismiss the case. And then they'll have to litigate, the dismissal and all of that. So my guess is that Mueller will give him a redacted version, and Judge Ellis will find that unacceptable and say, I want it all. And then there's going to be a big fight. The problem with Mueller's people is that they've abused the process. It is now clearly a very bad faith investigation. The Manafort case should have just been sent to the Eastern District of Virginia for prosecution, just like the Michael Cohen investigation was in New York, but it wasn't because they wanted to control the approach to Manafort there. And they're going to have to defend the raid of Manafort's home, which, as you know, occurred before Mueller's jurisdiction was clarified by Rosenstein that he could do these other cases involving alleged bank fraud and tax payments. So it's going to be really interesting to see what Ellis does. I do not expect him to dismiss the case because he's known for this type of bluster, but this time his bluster is right on the money.
Yeah, I had said to Vince that I don't expect it to be what we think it's going to be because I was let down with Comey when Comey came out and laid out the case against Hillary Clinton and then said, yeah, but we're not going to do anything about it. So I'm used to being disappointed.
Yeah, this is kind of an amazing thing to watch this judge say this. The judge also saying that he thinks Mueller's just attempting to make these guys sing. He'd like to see, it looks like Mueller's team is just simply trying to get folks like Michael Cohen and Paul Manafort to flip against the President of the United States. Where do you sense this? Well,
there's no doubt that that's what they're trying to do. The problem is that assumes that there's something that they can give the government or flip on, which, of course, is not the case. So far, there's no evidence that any of that is true, either with General Flynn or Manafort. Indeed, all of the conduct that Manafort is charged with dates back to 2005 and 2006. The thing that I find, I know the reason the judge is doing this. He was deeply offended, as were many people, by the early morning raid on the Manafort home, where they, at 3 o'clock in the morning, had their front door broken down. They were both handcuffed and taken out of bed practically naked. Pretty disgusting tactics by Mueller. But here's the thing about Mueller that people don't understand. He may be quiet. He may be Brahmin. He may be, but Bob Mueller is a thug. Because he believes, just like Rosenstein does, that the government can do no wrong, that all DOJ lawyers are angels, and that nothing in pursuit of crime is unconstitutional. Bob Mueller's idea of good government is your idea of government at its worst, and this is now playing out. You do not allow what happened to the Manafort family and what happened to Michael Cohen's law office in New York to happen unless you don't care.
If he's a thug, should the president fire him?
The president cannot fire him at this point. That is politically unacceptable for him to do.
Yeah.
But the president can pardon everybody when the time comes and make it a nullity. It's too bad that we're in a position where someone who has abused their power as grossly as Bob Mueller has, with the consent of Rod Rosenstein, may I say, Rosenstein is a co-conspirator. And by the way, let's remember this. One of the things that Mueller is investigating is the so-called firing of Comey and Flinch as obstructions of justice. First of all, the president can fire anybody he wants to. But guess what? Rod Rosenstein recommended the firing of James Comey. So if Rod Rosenstein recommended it, and if Bob Mueller is investigating that as an obstruction of justice, then Rod Rosenstein is a co-conspirator.
Interesting.
You mentioned the president pardoning everybody when this finally happens. Why wait for that? If it's all politically untenable anyway, why not just pardon them in advance?
Because everything has a moment.
Yeah.
Politically and legally, and this is not the time to do it. I would recommend against any pardons at this point involving anybody in this investigation, because you're going to make it look like you're trying to cover up. Let it all go forward. Show how bad the investigation really is, and then you do your pardons at the end when it's clear that this has been an outrageous abuse of government investigative power with the consent of Rosenstein. And when you pardon everybody, Rosenstein gets another job somewhere, maybe in Eastern Europe as a consular official.
Devin Nunes yesterday was saying that he's going to push to hold Attorney General Jeff Sessions in contempt this week because he did not comply with a subpoena. They wanted classified information. The House Intelligence Committee wanted classified information regarding the FISA abuses, alleged FISA abuses and counterintelligence investigations,
right,
including Carter Page, and they've been ignored. Will he actually go through with this?
Well, certainly Nunes is going to request contempt, but here's the important part of this to remember. He should be pursuing contempt against the Attorney General and Rosenstein without any question. Because when you go back and you look at all the reasons that they have given in the past, the Justice Department has given, for refusing to disclose information for national security and reasons, that it's going to interfere with investigations, every time that's happened, you have seen that it was nothing more than embarrassing information about misconduct by DOJ and FBI officials. There's a wonderful article by Andy McCarthy this morning about the history of these lies by the Justice Department in refusing to disclose information. The same applies here. They don't want to show the memorandum which expanded Mueller's authority because what it demonstrates is that all along, this investigation was ill-founded by Rosenstein. Mueller never should have been appointed. There's nothing in that memo that's going to harm national security, and I don't care what the DNI, Dan Coates, says about it. These people are no longer believable. And if Congress wants to hold Jeff Sessions in contempt, they should go ahead and do it. And if they're not going to do it, they better explain why.
Yeah, and there are very few people who are in the position that Devin Nunes is, to be one of the Gang of Eight intelligence community members in the Congress, to force these types of responses, yet for some reason the Justice Department feels that it doesn't have to provide responses to.
Well, I think the Justice Department now no longer has credibility. Just as Robert Mueller is no longer a legitimate investigator, he's gone way beyond the pale, has abused his authority immensely, and should, while he can finish his job, his presence is an abomination on the Constitution. Mueller has become a disgraceful example of prosecutorial overreach. But the problem with the Justice Department is they're hand in glove with him. And it's an embarrassment for all of us who love the department and watch what Jeff Sessions and Rod Rosenstein are doing to it. They have become an embarrassment to this president, and it's tragic that the president's hands are tied and he can't do anything about it.
All right, more on this in a moment. I want to ask about this bad faith Mueller probe and what you said yesterday on Fox News Sunday. More with Joe DiGenova in a second.
All right, and we're here with Joe DiGenova, legal analyst, former U.S. attorney to the District of Columbia, and a regular right here on Mornings on the Mall.
You said yesterday, Joe, on Fox News Sunday, that the president will not sit down for an interview because the Mueller investigation has reached a level of bad faith. This is no longer a good faith investigation. Curious, are you speaking from a place of authority on this in the sense that you know the president has ruled out an interview?
No, that's my opinion.
Okay.
This is me speaking as a private citizen. I do not believe that the president should sit down. I don't believe that he will sit down. And that's because I believe, as I just said earlier, that the Bob Mueller investigation has reached a level of bad faith that even judges are now beginning to realize. Judges are now beginning to sense that there is incredible prosecutorial misconduct at play in the Mueller investigation, and under no circumstances would any lawyer allow their client to be interviewed by people that you believe are acting in bad faith with that type of power. Not only that, first of all, remember there are two Justice Department opinions from the 1970 and the 2000 that say a president cannot be indicted. That is the generally accepted constitutional rule. If a president can't be indicted, what does Mueller want to talk to him about when he says he's not a target? He's already interviewed everybody else in the campaign. Under Article 2, all executive power rests in the president. Under executive privilege, the president cannot be forced, nor can any of his aides, to talk about conversations that they've had about anything. And under recent case law, way after U.S. versus Nixon, the D.C. Circuit has ruled that a president, as a particular constitutional officer, is not readily available to be subpoenaed in cases. So even if he issues a subpoena, Mueller won't be able to ultimately have it enforced against the president. So the bottom line is, don't talk to the guy. because Mueller has become fundamentally dishonest and his investigation is corrupt.
Some of the key players in this investigation, James Baker and Lisa Page, have resigned from the FBI. Is there a reason why they could be doing this? Does this protect them in some way with having to testify or anything?
No, because you can slap a subpoena on them after they've left office. Now, the IG may not be able to talk to them any longer, but my guess is they've long since talked to the Inspector General at DOJ, and that's all done. The fact that they're leaving doesn't affect them. They can be slapped with a grand jury subpoena. They have to testify like anybody else.
You know, James Comey sent a goodbye message to James Baker on Twitter. He was all, that's what he does these days. He tweets. And he's talking about James Baker and how wonderful he is. Nothing about Lisa Page, though. Did you read anything into that?
I think James Comey is a screwball, and anything that he does and says now is nothing more than book promotion. He's thoroughly disgraced himself, and in the process, the FBI along with it. Believe me, inside that building, James Comey is viewed as a disgrace.
Well, what about all the, that's interesting, because what about all the mythology around James Comey? The notion that actually the rank and file love James Comey, that he spent so much time stoking that, and that's the relationship that they have with them. Is that all untrue?
It is. In fact, I'm sure that there were some sycophants around him who loved him and who got promotions and advancement as a result of touching the hem of his garment. But the truth is, the people inside the Bureau now understand what an awful FBI director he was, and how troubled and tortured an individual he was, and how it infected the conduct of the FBI. Just go back and look at his tenure. He was fired. McCabe was fired. Baker's gone. Lisa Page, Strzok, Prystep, the head of counterintelligence. The list is endless of senior FBI officials who are gone, who are going to be indicted, who are going to go to prison. This all happened on James Comey's watch. It is not a good record.
The Boston Globe it reported that apparently former Secretary of State John Kerry has been making the rounds, meeting with Emmanuel Macron, meeting with Iran's Foreign Minister Javad Zarif, trying to put pressure on the Trump administration to not jump out of the Iran nuclear deal. Is he violating the Logan Act with this?
Well, I don't think there's any question that he's violating the Logan Act. And if Sally Yates were still at the Justice Department, I'm sure she would be seeking an arrest warrant for him, just like she tried to do for General Flynn. In fact, I wish somebody from WMAL, from the news department, would call Sally Yates, and wherever she is up in New York, at whatever white shoe law firm, and find out what she thinks of John Kerry's activities. Kerry obviously is violating the statute, although it's not a statute that's ever been enforced, except against Republicans like General Flynn in the end days of the Obama administration. It's really embarrassing that Kerry can do this with a straight face after whining, along with his Democratic lefty friends, about what Michael Flynn did, which was perfectly legal during a transition. Kerry should be ashamed of himself, but these folks, he's married so many rich women, he just doesn't care anymore.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see what happens. They're calling it a shadow campaign. And you're right. I don't understand why there is just no outrage when it comes
Jeff
to any
Sessions,
of this.
who should be sending him a letter saying cease and desist, can't figure out how to function as Attorney General.
Should Jeff Sessions still be the Attorney General?
Should he be?
Yes.
Absolutely not. No, he can't function legitimately as an AG now. Yeah. He's lost his credibility. Rod Rosenstein has helped destroy his attorney generalship. Both of them should have enough courage and sense to resign. They're not going to, so they're going to hang around until there comes a time when they have to just leave and resign on their own. The president's not going to fire them because it's too much of a hassle for him.
All right, well, Joe, you answer all our questions. We save them up until we get to talk to you, and you make us smarter, so thank you so much for that.
You bet, guys. Take care.
Take care. Joe DiGenova, legal analyst, former U.S. Attorney to the District of Columbia.